What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Futurecast on the Player Profiler Radio Network on the good old YouTube and on the podcast feed. If you're listening on a podcast, be sure to type in the Futurecast in wherever you're listening to podcasts on Spotify, on Apple, and subscribe to the Spotify or Apple channel that's called the Futurecast. It's not just on the Player Profiler Radio Network. It's the Futurecast. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you click that 5-star on there and leave us a little review. But today we're going to walk through a little bit of what I saw at the Georgia Pro Day. I might talk a little bit about the Clemson, the South Carolina Pro Days, compare some of these prospects, as well as walking through the NFL Mock Draft Index and the NFL Draft Order for the upcoming NFL Draft, which is just under 6 weeks away. Kansas City, baby, it's coming quick. It's coming very, very quick. But without further ado, let's get into the show. Takeaway number one. These were my big eight, my great eight prospect workouts from this week, from the 3 pro days I went to. I ranked these top 8 guys. They're over there on Twitter at Carpentier NFL. Starting with number 8, Zach Pickens from South Carolina. Zach Pickens came in. So him, Brian Bresee, and Jalen Carter were the 3 best defensive linemen that I wanted to go look at this week. Myles Murphy didn't work out. Nolan Smith is more of an edge guy, more of a stand-up outside backer. But these 3 interior guys, Jalen Carter, Brian Bresee, and Zach Pickens, are 3 guys I really wanted to look at. Coming in, expectation probably has Jalen Carter, obviously top 5, top 10. Brian Bresee, maybe in the 20s, probably early round 2, if not. And then Pickens kind of could just draw his own area, whether it's going to be late second, early third, mid third, late third, wherever it's going to be. Pickens, number 8 on this list. The other 2 guys are ahead of, well, Carter's not on the list, but number 8, Zach Pickens, didn't look bad. Had a good workout. Brenson Buckner was the lead defensive line coach from the Jacksonville Jaguars that worked out Zach. I thought Zach looked solid, but it was a clear distinction between him on Monday and Brian Bresee on Tuesday. That Bresee is head and shoulders above Zach Pickens. Pickens had some good, nasty tendencies to him, and he was learning from Brenson Buckner, but I'm not the biggest fan. I wasn't the biggest fan on paper anyways, and now when I look at the NFL Mock Draft Index, go down to the defensive line and see if Pickens is on this list. Pickens is not projected in the top, I think we have 100 showing right now, 100 picks. He's not projected in the top 100 picks currently via all these NFL mock drafts that you can find on Bleacher Report, CBS, Draft Countdown, Draft Network, Draft Wire, Draft Text, ESPN, PFF, Player Profiler, Sports Illustrated, Sharp Football, PFN, all these different sites. Zach Pickens does not crest the top 100 per average, and that makes sense just based on what I saw. Number 7, Chris Smith, the safety from Georgia. Chris Smith looked good. Him and Kelly Ringo worked out together, and I actually preferred Chris Smith to Kelly Ringo during this workout. Ringo looked a little tight in the lower half, but he is a different athlete. He's a 200-pound guy that plays. He plays like he's a 200-pound guy at cornerback. He's got the 4.3 speed. Everybody knows that. But they're doing these turn and burn workout. These turn and burn back. It's not turn and burn. It's a back pedal, and then you turn, find the DB coach, and then he says right or left. You turn on the dime, and then you get a ball thrown to you. And Smith just looked so much cleaner, so much more crisp. He looked more of a professional athlete than did Ringo. Ringo was just a little tighter, but I mean that's not that bad. I'm trying to find the list of DB coaches that were there. I tweeted these out on Twitter. So we had the Falcons defensive back coach Steve Jackson, which makes sense because it was in Athens, and that's just an hour from Georgia. And then the Cincinnati Bengals defensive back coach Robert Livingston from the Bengals, and the Steelers DC Terrell Austin was the one that was playing the turn and burn route. He was at the back end of this workout. I thought Chris Smith looked good. I think Smith is going to continue to rise up through this process. You look at the defensive backs in the NFL draft right now, where Smith is going off the board. He's currently at pick 72. You can find that over at the NFL Mock Draft Index at Player Profiler. 72 slates him right smack dab in the early part of round 3. I think he's going to be able to move himself up even a little bit more through that process. I think you're going to see him at the end of round 2-ish, mid round 2 in that area. Number 6, Brian Bresee. Brian Bresee came in to the Clemson Pro Day as kind of the big head honcho, the big dog working out. It was him and Trenton Simpson. Myles Murphy moved his workout to April 4th. because he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. Didn't play the bowl game. And when I'm going to these pro days, it's a lot of local beat. It's a lot of local Georgia writers. It's a lot of college writers, college kids, college students, whatever. And then a lot of the old heads that are from Georgia, from Clemson, from South Carolina, that know and that track the team throughout the entire season. And it was overwhelmingly annoyed with Miles Murphy. I will say it this way. There was like, oh, yeah, of course he's not going to work out today. He couldn't play in the bowl game because he had to get ready for today. And now he's not ready today. So he's got to have his own work on April 4th. It was just kind of like that feeling from all of these reporters that was throwing me off, because Murphy's a guy he's got the athleticism. He's 6'5", 270, and he should be running in the 4.5s if he's healthy. And him waiting does scare me a little bit. Matty Kuhn goes through the NFL mock draft index for me, and he compiles a lot of these numbers, and he's like, do you think that Miles Murphy to the Vikings in the 20s makes sense? And I was like, I mean, is he going to show up to this workout? If he doesn't show up to this workout on April 4th, I could definitely see I could see Miles Murphy falling even further and potentially being in the 20s. But if he gets that workout in, I think you're looking at Miles Murphy being a lock top 10 pick, because that's where he should be going. So I'm looking at the defensive line right now. I don't see any Miles Murphy. Look at the edge. He's currently projected 15th overall. Nolan Smith currently projected 16th overall. I think Nolan Smith, I'll talk about him next. He's number 5 on this list. Nolan Smith, though, comes in, and I saw him at the combine, and he was an absolute dog on the stage. He was an absolute dog on the field. I don't need to go through his metrics again as far as how he worked out. And then on Wednesday, he was an absolute dog at this Georgia Bulldogs workout. He comes in about that 6'3", 235, 240-pound range, 4.3940 at the combine, the 436th most athletic player in the NFL, in the player profiler database. That is over 6,620 prospects in it. Nolan Smith looked great. And as bad as people are talking about Jalen Carter, who's not on this 8 great prospect workouts of the week list for me, Nolan Smith was equally as better. So Carter may have dropped into people's brains, may have dropped 5 picks. Nolan Smith rose 5 picks. So whichever way you look at that, Smith continues to look great, continues to smash the entire combine and NFL draft process. When you look at the NFL order right now, if you go over to playerprofiler.com, see if I can share this little screen ski here for a minute for those of you on the YouTube. If I click here, you can see the draft order on Player Profiler. A little double tap for the plus, and you can see the order. Now, where do you see Nolan Smith fitting in? I think you get down to this 7 range, and that's when you begin to, even the 6 range with Detroit. You just have to start opening your mind of okay, what could this team bring in? Think of Nolan Smith on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson. It's important to have 2 edge rushers like this. The Raiders, they have Max Crosby, but they also have Chandler Jones on their side. They failed to Clelin Ferrell. Number 7 is a spot you could potentially think about that edge rusher. Obviously, we know McDaniels is coming from New England. New England's a big pass rush. I don't know, not university, pass rush team. Like they like to have all these different hybrid pass rushers. I think he fits well there. Atlanta needs pass rush, clearly. Chicago, when they were up in the top 3, at one point they were talking about Will Anderson, Jalen Carter. Why not also have that conversation be around Nolan Smith? The Philadelphia Eagles, a bunch of free agents this year. They brought a bunch back, but they also could use some edge rushers. I think you just look at this entire range right here, and I think that one of these 4 picks could easily be explained or broken down as being a Nolan Smith spot. And then, as Joe says in the chat, Tennessee Titans. We haven't even talked about Tennessee yet. They have a lot of holes to fill, but I think Nolan Smith is a guy that fits well in that, right next to that Harold Landry role. Bud Dupree, obviously, he's gone now. Kind of just playing in that hybrid, that edge rushing system where we saw, obviously that's what Mike Vrabel is known for from back in his days in New England. And then you just talk about all these teams. Houston, they could use some edge rushing. Jets, yes. We just talked about New England. So I think you look at picks 7 through 14, and any one of those spots, you can see Nolan Smith going off the board. He has been an immense riser through his entire process. Big fan of Nolan Smith. Cam Smith. Let's stay with the Smiths here. Cam Smith is going to make this list. Darius Rush did not make this list, but Cam Smith and Darius Rush should both make this one. Darius didn't have as good of a day as Cam did, but Darius has had a fantastic NFL draft process dating back to the Senior Bowl. He looked fucking awesome. There was a bunch of cornerbacks that looked great at the Senior Bowl. And then you talk about Darius Rush, who's just kind of like growing through the process. Is he going to be a day one guy? No. But is he going to continue to build as we go? I think so. We look where Cam Smith is currently going on the NFL Mock Draft Index. And I can pull up the cornerback position, and I can see that Cam Smith is still slated as a third cornerback off the board, ahead of Kelly Ringo, 23.2 in NFL mock draft circles for Cam Smith. And then we look down, and we don't see any Darius Rush, and that's the top 100. So I do think Darius Rush is going to pop his head into the top 100. I do think he's going to be a mid-second round pick by the time this is end-all, be-all done. But his workout was just not on the same level of Cam Smith in South Carolina on Monday. Cam made every catch. Cam looked the most fluid. Cam is a slighter guy. He's not built quite the frame. So I've compared him to the J.C. Horns and the Jalen Ramseys, calling him the seatbelt cornerback of the class. But he's just not. He doesn't have the same exact build as either of those guys with that almost 200-pound frame. They can just go through and deal with things. I will say one quote I just found was back at the combine, asked Jalen Hyatt, the wide receiver from Tennessee, who was the toughest cornerback that you went against? It was Cam Smith from South Carolina. So Cam Smith, I think, is a guy that really he's fallen down through this process, but I think it's more so due to Darius Rush growing, and then just a bevy of these other cornerbacks, Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter, Kelly Ringo, also enhancing their stock through this entire process as well. But I think when you're looking at Cam Smith, I think he's a bona fide day one guy. DB coaches Charles Burks from the Bengals and Tony Oden from the Jets were on hand at the South Carolina Pro Day, and I think Cam Smith put on a great show. And you could just see he was this duo. They were the dudes at this Pro Day. Devontae Reed was there working out with them, but you could just feel it was Cam and it was Darius. It was back and forth, and they talked about going through this process together. So that was fun. We had a comment in the chat from Miss Joe. I feel bad for McIntosh. He ran so slow and the dream was over just like that. It sucks. We'll talk about Georgia and their weaponry here in just a minute. But first, I want to get to their offensive line. Broderick Jones, offensive tackle from the University of Georgia. Broderick Jones had 24, I believe the number was 24 formal interviews at the NFL Combine just a couple weeks ago, which was like the second most or the most that we had heard from anybody. JSN had a shitload as well, but Broderick Jones, the offensive lineman from Georgia, worked out with Warren Erickson and then Warren McClendon from Georgia on Wednesday. Warren McClendon was the one that shut down Aiden Hutchinson in the national championship just 2 years ago. A couple of the coaches on hand: Bears offensive line coach Chris Morgan, Falcons Dwayne Ledford, Titans Jason Hautlang, and then the Giants assistant Chris Smith and Jets assistant Billy Vandermark. So both Giants and Jets out of New York came down. The Tennessee Titans obviously need a bunch of offensive line help. The Bears and the Falcons. You compare that list to what the top 10 looks like right now, and you can kind of project where you can think that Broderick may go, because Broderick is a guy. You look at the top list right now, NFL Mock Draft Index. Where is Broderick Jones going? Broderick Jones currently is slated to go 15.7 overall. But like I said, Paris Johnson, 11, Peter Skoronski, 12. I think Broderick Jones and Darnell Wright have been two of the biggest risers at the tackle position through this entire process. Broderick Jones, 15.7. I think that feels more of like we're getting closer to a floor there. 16, 17, 18 feels like a floor for a Broderick Jones. You look at 17 being the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then you get down to 19, 20 with the Bucks and Seattle Seahawks. I think that's when the floor kind of falls out on him. I don't see him getting past kind of those spots. Like if he falls to Detroit at 18, I think that's a spot where they're like, well, I mean, come on, man, this is Broderick Jones. I don't see that happening, though. So you look at the Giants, where the Giants are picking right now. The Giants, they brought their assistant out there. The Giants are sitting at 26th overall in this draft. They're the team that's really most out of range out of these four teams. But you look at the Jets and you look at the Titans. The Jets are at 13. The Titans are at 11. And the Bears and Falcons. The Bears are at 9, and the Falcons are at 8. So we're looking at 8, 9, 11, and 13. We're all at the Georgia Pro Day dialed in, and I marked all 5 of these guys because as we go through these pro days, I like to write down. I may not hit on every single position coach that is in attendance, because I almost missed on one of the Giants. Fuck, I can never remember his name. The defensive line coach for the Giants. He used to be the Vikings defensive line coach. He's the man. He's what brought Danielle Hunter along, et cetera, et cetera. But he wasn't in the only reason I recognized him is because I knew who he was, but he wasn't in there working out, doing the workouts with these guys. I tried to write down my list when I tweeted out of everybody that had their hand in the workout, was physically in the workout, putting a pad on their hand, or was telling a player what to do. These 5 dudes, Bears, Jets, Falcons, Titans, Giants, were all on hand. That's pick 8, 9, 11, and 13. And then the interesting one is the Giants that are all the way down at 26. Why'd the Giants send their assistant there at 26? Are the Giants going to trade up to get this Broderick Jones tackle? I don't know. It's a very interesting note of thought. Patterson, there you go. Thank you. Appreciate you, Franz. Thank you. That's yes. What the fuck's his first name, though? I'm so terrible with this. I know coach. Andre Patterson. Thank you, God. Anyway, thank you, Franz, from the chat. Andre Patterson, shout out Minnesota Vikings, shout out New York Giants. He was in attendance at Clemson. He showed up to Clemson with Don Martindale. And then Martindale, I did not see Martindale at the Georgia Pro Day, however. So now we go on to number 2 on this list. Number 2 on this list is actually not in the 2023 NFL draft class because he's a motherfucking dog. And he's actually a freshman going to soon be sophomore. And his name is Dylan Bell. Dylan Bell, you need to know this name. He's entering his sophomore season in 2023. He's been very efficient in and out of breaks all day at the Georgia Pro Day. Caught every ball, looked the best receiver on the field. And Stetson Bennett was like, dude, get out there. Like there was a couple throws left and Stetson got through like 95% of his workout, but he threw a deep in and out in the end zone to Dylan Bell. And he dropped it. And as soon as he came back, they ran one more play to Darnell. And then Stetson looked at Dylan. And he goes, I'm coming right back to you. Get back out there. And that's how they finished their workout. They just sent Dylan back out there and it was almost like it wasn't a confidence booster, but it was like, oh, like get another. We don't want to leave you on a drop ball. And I really respected that out of Stetson because Dylan Bell, you didn't have to give him shit. You didn't have to give him a workout, but it was pretty apparent from the jump. There was a bunch of guys. Matt Landers was there. Kenny McIntosh was there. Kyrus Jackson, Darnell Washington. There was a bevy of prospects in this class, and it was like the first 15 balls, 4 of them went to Dylan Bell, and it was like, who is that? That guy looks like, and he kind of looks like his face kind of looks like Damian Pierce with kind of like a little receding hairline. And I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And I'm talking to one of the beat reporters next to us, and he goes, that looks like Dylan Bell. I was like, who the fuck's Dylan Bell? I don't know, class of 2025. So I looked him up, class of 2025, Dylan Bell, and he just all day, bang, 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 bang. 6'1", 6'2", 200 pounds. About the frame that he comes in, he fits the archetype fucking perfectly. His upper body is jacked to the gills. His lower body is a little thin ski in the lower body, but he's got 2 years to fucking fill his body out. He's fantastic, and I think Dylan Bell is going to be great. Tweeted that out the other day, and I feel good about that. Like that right there it seems like a small thing, but even like I put him number 2 on this list. A guy like Dylan Bell, just seeing a guy like that at these workouts, I think it's one of the most underrated things about going to the pro days is seeing who's going to show up like this. Like with the South Carolina one, and Spencer Rattler showed up. He didn't throw to the prospects. It was like Josh Van and Jalen Brooks. He didn't throw to them because they brought in a different passer. But Spencer Rattler was there, at least supporting. Trey Knox was there, their transfer tight end from Arkansas. And then Juice Wells was there as well. And these guys, while everybody else was like warming up on the other end, Spencer Rattler's down here throwing balls, and you can just see the connection with him. You could see the size of Trey Knox. Trey Knox was fucking huge. Trey Knox is like 6'5", 265 right now. He looks fantastic. I think it's a guy that we're looking at. He looks kind of like the tight end in fucking shit. Jelani Woods. He looked like Jelani Woods. That's who he looked like at the South Carolina Pro Day. But Trey Knox, tight end from Arkansas, transferring now. Obviously, Jaheim Bell left, went to Florida State, and then Trey Knox comes in. So that'll be an interesting one as well. But Dylan Bell, yes, comes in number 2 on this overall list. He had an absolutely fantastic day, and it wasn't even his day to work out. He didn't run, he didn't do shit. He literally just ran routes, and I stole the show, in my opinion, at the Georgia Pro Day. I'd love to hear what some of the scouts thought about him as well. Number 1, though, on the list goes to none other than Trenton Simpson. Trenton Simpson tore the fucking building off down in Indianapolis with his workout, and then he goes back to Clemson. He did just enough where he looked great. He ran a 4.43 at the NFL Combine, 6'2", 235, 21 and a half years old. He's just walking around stacked up. He looks like a pure running back. You put this guy running back, and I think he'd be I think he could play running back in the NFL. But Trenton Simpson's walking around there. Okay, doesn't look bad. He runs the 3-cone. I think I had him at 6.88 unofficial. He runs a 20-yard shuttle, 4.21 unofficial. Not bad, pretty solid numbers. He broke 7 in the 3-cone, which is good. 6.88's very, very good. The 20-yard shuttle, 4.21. I'm not as impressed because I see Brian Bresee run a 4.40. 4.21 solid, though. Definitely solid at 235 pounds for a middle linebacker. The thing that took me over the top was this Broncos scout who I later saw at the Georgia Pro Day the next day, and he was kind of in that same lead role, is that this Denver scout stayed on him. And after this 3-cone drill, a lot of the players at Clemson struggled with the 3-cone workout where they kept, rolling starts. So they double clock them and they have to restart it, or they get around the first cone. They make a backwards turn. They'd stop the workout, make them rerun it. All these different things that there's nuances to everything you do. All the shuttles and all 3-cones have nuances to them. And if you don't run it exactly how the scouts want, they'll flag you. You got to restart it. And Clemson was struggling like a motherfucker with it. And Trenton Simpson finishes his 3-cone workout. This Broncos scout is just, talking, riding him, da-da-da. And then they walk over, and I've talked about this on my show the other night. They walked over to the broad jump area. So the process for the pro day was broad jump, vertical. So they go in the weight room, they do the height reach, arm length, weight, etc. Then they come out, they do broad vertical, bench, 40, shuttle 3-cone, position drills. So they went and did all that stuff. Trenton did not do the vertical or the broad jump. He did the shuttle 3-cone, period. Then he was going to do his positional workouts. They took like a 20-minute pause, essentially, between the 3-cone and the shuttle because of Trenton Simpson, because this Broncos guy wanted him to jump. They're supposed to go into positional stuff. They went straight over to the broad. He did 5 broad jumps. I think he finished with 9'10", but he literally was jump, reset, jump, reset, jump, reset, jump, reset. They just kept making him do it. And I don't know if they were like forced him to see if he could get to that 10-foot marker and make him just a freak athlete in that 10-foot marker, but they just kept pushing him, but he couldn't get to it. Then they set up the vertical jumper. He jumps, knocks the vertical jumper over, breaks it, quite literally breaks it. They have to go get a new one, takes another 5 minutes. They set it back up. He jumps up, whammy, 36 and a half. And he's like hyped, and everybody else is hyped. They set it back up, jumps, wham. There's like 3 chips left to hit on this vertical jumper. And he's like, I'm going to get them all. But at that point, it was 40 and a half, which is what he ended up with. But he did try again. He missed 40 and a half inch vertical for Trenton Simpson. He didn't have to do that stuff, but those were like the side things that really took over the top. And then, of course, he had a great workout as well at the Clemson Pro Day. So there's the top 8 right there. Number 8, Zach Pickens. 7, Chris Smith, safety from Georgia. Number 6, Brian Bresee, D-line, Clemson. Number 5, Nolan Smith, edge, Georgia. Number 4, Cam Smith, corner, South Carolina. Number 3, Broderick Jones, tackle, Georgia. Number 2, for the Devy people out there, Dylan Bell, wide receiver, Georgia, 2025. And number 1, Trenton Simpson from Clemson. But Georgia was a great one. My man, Jason Allwine, I saw him in the chat here a minute ago. He was down there. He met me. He drove up from Atlanta to go to his first ever pro day. We had the boots on the ground. He knows that. And he had a good time. I think Amir Speed was another guy that was there. Ran the 4.3s a couple times. from Michigan State. I haven't watched his tape yet, but I've seen some back and forth comments on Twitter on the thought of one Amir Speed. I'm gonna have to, like I said, dig in a little bit more to that. But there was a ton of coaches on hand at the Georgia Pro Day as expected. Joe Coolin, the Chiefs defensive line coach, was on the lead for the Jalen Carter Nolan Smith workout. A lot of people talking about Jalen Carter, questions about his health, questions about his weight, him finishing the workout. I don't put much into him not finishing this workout, as he finished the workout, took his shirt off. He looked like shit, period. You can say he looked like shit, but to say he didn't finish the workout, I disagree. I thought I saw him do everything he was supposed to do. The D-line group, he was the only interior defensive lineman, and then they brought in the linebackers, and it was kind of like a transition where he went off, and then more of these linebackers came on, and they started to do more edge drop back stuff. Carter doesn't do edge drop back stuff, so he didn't do any of that stuff. Unless I missed a fucking play or something, I saw him complete every workout, and it all looked like dog shit, but he completed everything that I saw. So Jalen Carter I thought he held his weight good going into the day. Watching him walk around, he looked good. I tweeted that out. But then during that workout, it was just, his body language, I don't want to be here. You could just see that was inside of him. Let's see, anybody else that was there as well. I think I went over all of the offensive linemen that were in attendance for Georgia. Obviously, went over Dylan Bell. See if I have any more notes here. Oh, the big one, I guess. Pittsburgh's going to draft a kicker. We'll take that. So Pittsburgh's going to draft the Georgia kicker. I don't know when they're going to do it. They're going to do it in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th. What did I say here? She says, Cody did say the scouts have their own records and times. They don't use combine numbers necessarily. Yeah, what are you replying to? Oh, how high of a correlation do you think there is between pro day scout visits and those teams drafting those players? Scout visits don't mean shit during this process, I don't think, because they're sending scouts everywhere because they want to get a hand time on everybody. And I talked about this during the combine, after the combine, that every team has a database. It's kind of similar to Player Profiler, I would say, where they track 40s, they track all the shuttles, all the three cones, all that shit, and they all do it on hand times because it's the only consistent thing you can have. Obviously, this light is killing me. Obviously, you can't have electronic times or laser timers everywhere you go. You can have it at the combine, and maybe potentially at some pro days you could have it, but NFL teams rely on their hand times. I shouldn't do thumb, it's trigger. At the combine, even, the NFL teams will track their hand times. So if Tank Dell, for example, runs a 4.49 on laser, and a team has him at 4.43, he's going in the book at 4.43. Reason being, so you can compare those to the pro days. Because if you're hand timing, he's hand timing, we're all hand timing, that's more correlated, more comparable than it is to say, well, he had a 4.49 at the combine on laser, but we had him 4.44 on hand at this event. It's like, well, okay, so what's the difference? Well, we know because of the research we've done, it's 0.5, but the NFL teams would rather just have everything on the same thing. Another question from Senior Football in the chat. What range do you think Jalen Carter will be drafted in? I don't think Jalen Carter is going to fall very much at this current time. Based on what we know, I do not see him getting out of the top 10. I think that Seattle will take that swing. Chicago will take that swing. Imagine if he falls to the Eagles. I would die. If he falls to the Eagles and they pair him back up with Jordan Davis, everybody in that top 10 is going to completely regret that. Hey, I might be getting sick. Light sensitivity and sniffles. I've been having sniffles for 2 weeks, but that's what comes with traveling. So this has been a big recap show. My biggest point, more so, that I wanted to make was just going through all of these pro days, getting through some of the big guys I wanted to talk about. There was one more guy. What the hell was his name? Oh, Jack Podlesny, the kicker from Georgia. He stayed there all day, and then at the end, Mike Tomlin and the special teams coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Danny Smith, were in attendance. They watched him kick. They stood right behind him while he kicked off, did field goals, and they asked him to do onside kicks. And It's a pretty impressive workout, I thought. And they seem to be big fans of him. It was the only special teams coach and head coach in attendance that paid attention to him. So I would assume that means they're very interested in Jack Podlesny from Georgia. We'll see where he goes. Kickers are always a random fucking draw in the NFL draft. Should you ever draft one? No. Do people do it? Yes. Especially if they depend on it. But I mean, Pittsburgh takes chances. I don't know why they'd be drafting kicker anyway. They go for it on fourth more than a lot of teams in the NFL. So that was just an interesting note, though, that Jack Podlesny had a good workout. And quite frankly, that literally Mike Tomlin stood there and watched him do the entire workout. The other note I had was Jets defensive line coach Aaron Whitecotton. Did I say Giants? I meant Jets defensive line coach, I should say. Worked out with Nolan Smith, as well as linebacker coach Bobby King, who was at the Clemson Pro Day working out Trenton Simpson. He was also working out Nolan Smith. So we talked about the Titans earlier. The Titans are a team that should be in on linebacker at some point. It looks like early based on their workouts with Nolan Cart. Jesus, I'm switching their names together. Based on their workouts with Nolan Smith and Trenton Simpson. But this has been the Futurecast. This has been a good episode. Reminder, words are not coming out smooth today. Reminder, the Breakout Finder app is live right now. The 2020 class is in there. And the 2023 class features a bevy of studs that you need to just compare to last year's class and then look forward to next year's class. You pull up the breakout gauge right now. You can see it on your phone. It's loading, and it'll tell you exactly who the top of the list is right now. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. Rashi Rice makes the top 5 in the Breakout Finder for 2023. Go check out the Breakout Finder right now and find out why Rashi Rice comes in at number 5 ahead of Jalen Hyatt. Go to the running back position and find out why some of these guys end up where they do. I think you'll be very surprised to see where guys like Deuce Vaughn are, Evan Hull, even Tavion Thomas, and on down to the likes of Chase Brown, who does not come in. This thing does not know what film looks like, but this thing is smart as hell, and it has Chase Brown outside of the top 12 at the running back position. So go check out the Breakout Finder, Google Play, and in the App Store on Apple. This has been the Futurecast. I appreciate you guys for hanging out on this fine Friday. There's going to be 6 shows this Friday, today, March 17th, Happy St. Patrick's Day. 6 shows on the Player Profiler Radio Network today, as well as I'll be premiering the trailer for the Players Lounge. That will be coming out on Monday. Be sure to stay tapped in, stay tuned in at Carpentier NFL on Twitter. The Players Lounge premiere trailer is coming this afternoon, and the Players Lounge episode 1 will drop on Monday, March 20th. Have a fantastic St. Patrick's Day. Go eat yourself some corned beef. Talk to you next week.